Prime Minister's Question Time was an hour ago. You were there, Kevin, as you do diligently every week in your world, in the press gallery, watching what happened. To give us an overview, firstly, a lot of people saying Kemi Badenoch had quite a good week.
She did. I mean, we've got a proper story, and that doesn't happen very often, a proper government U-turn. Quite often they try, I think, to throw these things into PMQs, because not that it will get lost in the mix, but it's...
no one's prepped any questions on it.
And that's right, and it kind of takes your attention away from all the other questions he gets asked, because you've got one big story, and it is, you know, significant. They're U-turning on this winter fuel policy. They've been under pressure for some time from Labour MPs and from voters, obviously, on it. We knew that it was in the works. We knew that there was discussions going on behind the scenes. They denied it repeatedly, that there was going to be any change, until there is a change. Now, the weird thing was, Kemi Badenoch asked about it, and then in his answer, he talked about, we're going to look at the thresholds, the earnings thresholds. And then her next question made no reference to the fact that he had quite obviously U-turned.
Yes.
So you would have thought that that would be the perfect moment for her to say, how humiliating for the Prime Minister. He's had to drag him into Parliament, U-turn. You know, and he's had to, you know, go back on what he said. So much for the Iron Chancellor, all this type of stuff. But it was almost like she didn't hear the answer. So whether...
That is bizarre.
It was bizarre, because he set it up on a plate for her. In fact, I got a text from someone in number 10 straight after it, and it was like, I can't believe that she's missed that. She's missed the line.
Completely.
Which was, I'm giving you your U-turn that you've been demanding for weeks.
But is that because Kemi Badenoch doesn't really do spontaneity in that respect? She will be supremely uncomfortable to suddenly go there. Well,
she's gone in there obviously with her 6 questions. And the assumption would have been that, as in previous weeks, he would bat it away and refuse to give her an answer. But he's sort of wrong-footed her by saying, actually, you know what, we are going to look at it, because, you know, we are been listening. Well, their argument for it now is that the economy's growing. So early in the week.
So now they've got some money. This is absolute nonsense.
Complete nonsense. But they've just sort of, it's like a passing life raft, and they've jumped on it as to give themselves. So he said that, and rather than think on her feet and react to what he said, she's just basically gone, right, question number 2, and gone on to the next question, which just jarred, really, because the opportunity was there for her to really make some hay.
I mean, I think, again, it comes down to, you know, the reason Farage, we'll come back to him in a second, is such a good operator. Because what you want from that is not just for her to come back to it. You want to see that increase. You want to hear her say, hang on a second, did the Prime Minister just say, would you confirm you are doing a massive U-turn?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you want it said in a way that people go, wow, she's absolutely with us.
She's on it. She's on it.
She's on it.
And it's thanks to her that he's done this.
But I don't think even if she did come back, I don't think in the performative sense, she's great at doing that. And that's the bit that, you're probably surrounded by people who aren't great at advising on that either.
That is the issue. And, you know, it's not like the Prime Minister's any good at it either. You know, I mean, he's got actually noticeably worse in the last few weeks for just reading out answers.
Although he did come up with a reasonable line about Nigel Farage.
That was a good one. He was reading it, but it was a good line.
Nigel Farage wasn't in PMQs, and obviously he wasn't there yesterday to talk about what was going on. He's in America, apparently, and it forced Mr Starmer to joke. He's absent so often, basically. I almost expected to see him on the immigration statistics. Which is not a bad line.
Not a bad line. And he also said he's the first to, he's maybe the first to use the new e-gates, which obviously is the big win that they announced from the EU deal. And that in fact, what was interesting was Lee Anderson, who'd asked the question, he was laughing his head off. Richard Tice was also laughing his head off at this joke, which I'm just wondering if Nigel Farage was watching that, what he would have thought about his 2 colleagues laughing at his expense. But it was a funny joke.
It's a reasonable line, wasn't it?
And obviously not one that Keir Starmer has come up with himself, clearly. But he did manage to, he said the line and it was fine. And he got a decent laugh out of it, and you can't often
But it should really be the leader of the opposition that is scoring those kind of points. You know, those sort of lines should be from the leader of the opposition to the Prime Minister or somebody in his front bench's team.
Yeah, definitely. And we've said it before, others who were in her position were much better at it. And it doesn't necessarily follow that you're good at PMQs, therefore you're going to become Prime Minister. William Hague is a classic example. He beat Tony Blair week in, week out. and then got thrashed in the 2001 general election.
Yeah, that's probably the best example, really.
But it's good for just for morale amongst your troops. You know, if you're knocking the Prime Minister around, it makes your MPs feel good.
Of course it does.
But the opposite's the case if you're not.
Let's talk about what happened yesterday as well in the House of Commons, this statement on Israel. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen David Lammy this animated, which forced me to think, well, this is his true skin. He's happier in this condemnation of Israel. Yeah. Previously, they'd all kept to this, particularly in opposition, where you had Starmer, who was sort of more forthright than Rishi Sunak on matters Israel. Yeah. But here it is. I mean, there's obviously a lot going on there. There is a humanitarian crisis. There's, it's a horrendous mess for lots of reasons. But Lammy kind of came straight out with it there, didn't he? I mean, Keir Starmer began by talking about how, he was, quite clear that this was an intolerable situation. Humanitarian aid needs to get in at pace, he said. But Lammy then really went for it. He said, we must call this what it is. It's extremism, it's dangerous, it's repellent, it is monstrous. And he got the cheers of his benches on that one and cries of shame when they talked about what was going on in Israel. Yeah, he did. And it really juxtaposed with Priti Patel, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, because obviously she would not go anywhere near as far in condemning Israel. And it is hugely significant because thus far the government has been broadly supportive of Israel, clearly in the immediate aftermath of October the 7th. Yeah. Absolutely was. But as the war has progressed and Israel's response to what happened has become, just stronger and stronger and stronger, I think it's reached a breaking point almost. Yeah. I mean, it will be interesting to see if, what Donald Trump says next. I mean, where he that's going to be key, not as far as David Lammy, but if he were to indicate in some way that Netanyahu, you're going to have to rein it in a bit here because this is just getting outrageous, then I think that would be hugely significant. But of course, remember, you had the leaders of Keir Starmer, France and Canada with that statement a couple of nights ago as well, which was also pretty... And of course, Netanyahu isn't, the most popular leader in his own country. Exactly. I mean, he's under pressure in that respect. Yeah. He could be gone at some point as well. And you've got that fragile coalition government with a lot of, further to the right people than him. He's got to try and keep them on board as well. Let's move to this story. Sticking with Starmer, Keir Starmer refused to rule out tax rises after Angela Rayner apparently proposed 8 increases. This was a leaked memo to Rachel Reeves. Starmer spokesman dismissed concerns about a rift between Rayner and Reeves, emphasising Labour's focus on economic growth and stability. That's sort of how it works, isn't it? Rayner's proposals including reinstating pensions, lifetime allowance, dividend tax changes and higher corporation tax for banks. How does what you might think between a Deputy Prime Minister and a Chancellor, how does that memo, I don't know in what form it came, whether it was sent as a letter, put in a box, taken over to the Treasury from the Deputy Prime Minister, whether it was a text message, how did it, how does it fall into the hands of a journalist, Kevin? What's the process here, do you think? Well, there are 2 theories here. One is that it was briefed by Angela Rayner's office themselves. Great scoop by the Telegraph, I have to say. The thought being that that would burnish her credentials on the left of the party, and if you see quite a lot of left-wing MPs came out and said this is great, we should absolutely be doing this instead of cutting disability benefits, for instance, just tax the rich and all will be well. Because, they've made the point that if you watch her in PMQs every week, she pretty much has to sit there like she's chewing on a wasp and doesn't look happy at all. Not at all. And I think she's had to swallow an awful lot. She's obviously on the left of the party, so she's having to... I think it's... So the theory is she's leaked it in order to send a message to the backbenches, I'm still on your side, guys. This is what I'm trying to do behind the scenes. The other theory is, which I think is less convincing, is that the Treasury maybe briefed it in order to basically do in Angela Rayner. But, given that it happened 2 or 3 months ago, it was before the spring statement and was ignored anyway, I don't really see what would necessarily be in it for them. So I tend to think, and I don't know this, but I tend to think it's more likely to have been leaked by Angela Rayner's side just to sort of, as I say, boost her standing on the Labour backbenches. Apparently there's going to be an election, a general election, in the next couple of weeks. Who says that? A bloke on Twitter. Oh, well. Yeah, and I only raised that point because If I had a quid for every time someone's predicted a general election, there's definitely going to be one before the end of the year. Starmer will be gone. There's nothing that suggests that's going to happen.
Impossible.
But it does come up, and I saw somebody I saw a tweet from somebody who said, breaking news, there's going to be a snap. And I just saw this, I thought, what's a snap? Have you ever heard anyone in political commentary refer to a snap election as a snap, singular?
Never.
Never. No one ever says
Never,
that.
ever.
So somebody said there's going to be a snap, and I thought, well, what? I was going mad looking. What's a snap? A cold snap? Is it going to get chilly over the bank holiday?
Well, snap, I've heard, in journalism, you heard of a PA snap.
Yeah, exactly.
When the PA, the press association, puts something out that's like a massive story. Get out of that.
It's a snap. Yeah. But anyway, so that was one prediction I saw, and then another one. Angela Rayner's going to take over, and then somebody said, well, she wouldn't be able to take over because obviously there's a different system in the Labour Party for getting your leader. But then, of course, Brown took over Blair, over from Blair.
He did, but there wasn't there was a contest. Well, there wasn't even a contest. There was a process. It was a leadership process. No one stood against him.
No one stood against him.
But, you know, if people could, well, no one got enough support. I think John McDonnell tried and didn't get enough support.
That's right.
And he was elected. But weirdly, they still had to have a campaign of sorts. But no, there would need
I'd
to
almost
be an
forgotten
election.
the sort of Brown campaign.
Yeah, it was weird because, like I say, no one stood against him. Well, no one got enough support in order to get on the ballot paper, so no one actually cast a vote in his favour, which was part of his problem. Really.
And the public never voted for him because he...
That's right.
He lost that 2010 election, and back to that meal in the Islington restaurant, he was expecting to do at least a full term, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, the plan was, I think, wasn't that Blair was going to do one full term, then stand down halfway through the second term to make way for Gordon Brown, and then, of course, he didn't do that. He reneged. And hung on until did his full second term. Then we eventually was forced out in his third term by supporters of Gordon Brown. I can't imagine the level of anger at the Treasury when Gordon Brown realised Blair was not going to step down. Furious.
Stuff would have been thrown, I'm pretty sure of that.
The mobile phones would have been bouncing off people's heads.
Off Spad's heads and all sorts of things. Who knows? He wasn't a violent man, but he was a man who could be angry. We know that much. The only reason I raised all of this is because the possibility that Angela Rayner could be the Prime Minister. That was where I was going to with this.
I mean, in theory, she's a deputy at the moment, but she would need to. I think she'd need to resign as deputy and to stand for leader, because the deputy post is elected by the Labour Party members.
Yes, because he can't fire her for his deputy.
He can't sack her as deputy, because she was elected by the members. So presumably she would need to stand down in order to stand
and then
be
stand
leader.
as,
And I dare say she probably fancies the idea, but her seat looks pretty precarious.
That's very
true. The next general election, that she might be better advised focusing on that in the first instance.
I mean, 2029 cannot come fast enough, could it?
Well, for a lot of them, it certainly can, because it's they could lose their seats without a doubt. A lot of Labour MPs, certainly a lot of them that came in at the last election will definitely lose their seats. They've got such wafer-thin majorities; they're not coming back. It'll be very interesting indeed. But a lot can change in 4 years.
True. Kevin, it's been great as ever. Thank you. Kevin Schofield with us, of course, political editor at HuffPost UK.